You're in a new leadership role. Where do you start? I've been asked that question for 20 years by different organizations, clients of mine that I've worked with. New leaders are brought in the middle of a project, or people are brought into a new team and then they reach out and say, what do we do here? There's a couple of things that we're going to share. There's actually 4 specific things I want to share with you today that are going to help you know how to get this thing off the ground at the right way. Step 1, when you've got a new team, is to clarify the key results that you need to deliver. And when I say key results, there's a lot of things that you have to work on. Every team does. But pick 3. Pick the 3 that have the most bang for their buck. They're the most important results. If you deliver on those 3, you had a successful year or 2 years, whatever the time period is. But get super clear on the key results. And when we say clear, we mean metric has to be in there. It's got to be a category and a metric. Things like profit margin, 3% improvement, right? You need to be that clear and that specific so that when people read them, they got them. They don't need a ton of interpretation or discussion to get it. The second thing you need to do is define what are the shifts in how your team is currently thinking and acting that will be required to deliver on those results. Now think about that for a minute. Your team, the team that you've just inherited, there's a specific culture around that team. There's a subculture within every organization's culture. Each team has its own subculture. So you've got to define what's the current culture. How does that team currently think? And how does that team currently show up? How do they act? How do they behave? The way they're currently thinking and acting is what's delivering the current results. Now, let me back up. If you pick your 3 results, step 1, and you say, actually, we're going to do just fine. We can keep thinking and keep acting the way we are right now, and we'll get to the new results. Great. Then you don't have any shifts that you need. You just need to keep moving and maintain that existing culture. But if you look at your team and you say, look, if we're going to get to that level of profitability, that many new clients, that much safety, whatever the number and target and category is, if we're going to go from where we are now to where we need to be, we have to think and act differently as a team. Then you need to be really clear with what that shift between how they're currently showing up and how they need to show up, what does that look like? Now, the first way to do that is get your team together. Get them engaged in the conversation. Call a team meeting, get them on a Zoom call, get them in person, whatever it needs to be, and ask them. Put the key results up and then say, if we're going to get to those results, how do we need to think and act differently? What are we doing today that's getting in the way of that? It's a barrier. It's not enabling where we need to go. And what would it need to look like if we were to do it different? How would we show up? How would we think? How would we approach these things differently if we were going to deliver on those results? And brainstorm a good sized list. Get 20 things on that list. Then hone in on the top 3 or 4. So you've got your 3 key results. Now kind of focus in that list of shifts that you need to create and define them. Get really clear once you've honed them down. You've got 2 or 3 or 4, whatever the number you end up at. Now give each one of those a title, a 2-word title, and a definition. Something like speak up. That would be the title. And speak up, the definition might be, I say what I think to accelerate the ideas that we're putting on the table, right? Whatever it is. I'm just making something up off the top of my head here. But you've got to get really clear with the definition of that shift. But the 2-word title gives you an anchor. It gives you a handle to hold on to so that you can use these and create movement, accelerate the speed of change on your team. And we're going to get into that in just a minute with the next couple. So step 1, you're on a new team. Step 1 is define the results that you need to deliver on. Category, metric. Step 2, define the shifts in how the team currently thinks and acts to how the team needs to think and act in order to deliver the results. Remember, the way you think and act today is delivering your current results. So by definition, you can't get the new results with them if you need to think and act differently. You'll just keep getting what you're getting. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So you have to think and act differently if you're going to produce a significantly different outcome. So step 3, you need to align your leadership practices to support those shifts. So you just described how you need your team to show up differently. Now you as a leader, you need to look at the way you're running the team and align to that. So we had one leader say, I need a lot more trust on my team. But yet anyone who needed to spend more than $50 on that team had to come and get his signature and 2 other signatures to approve spending anything over $50. So he said, you're telling your team we need you to feel trusted and we trust you, but yet you've got a business practice in place that's requiring all these signups for anything over $50. That is creating an experience that is leading to a belief that we don't trust you. So there, and it's not always black and white. You have to look at each of these as a case by case and determine, is that happening? Is what's happening right there with that helping move us to the new culture we need, the new subculture on our team? Or is it anchoring us in the old way of thinking and acting that's been delivering the results we've been getting for a long time that we need to change? So you've got to look at business practices, your leadership practices. I mean, think about how you run your meetings. What do you call your meetings? You might even pick one of those shifts. If it's speak up, you might rename the meeting the speak up meeting, because that meeting is particularly to create new ideas and get new thinking on the table. So you just name it one of your shifts. You're reinforcing the new way of thinking on the team, the new way of behaving on the team by actually formally doing something like changing the name of the meeting to one of those shifts. So you've got to take those shifts and implement them in the team. You've got to integrate them into your daily routine and your daily practices, your leadership practices, your team practices. So step 3 is align the business practices to the shifts that you need to create on the team so that they support that shift. The last thing we would tell you, the 4th thing, is you need to integrate some specific tools. These are tools that are time tested. They're proven to accelerate movement on the team. The first one is what we call feedback, right? We've all heard of feedback. No one's new to feedback, but feedback specifically around the shifts you defined. So when you're giving someone feedback, you're connecting the feedback you're giving them to the speak up shift, as well as the key results that you defined. So here's where you're actually helping us by speaking up. You do it here, here, and here. Here's where you could speak up even more in this meeting or in that meeting or in this one-on-one or in that situation. The reason why we need you to speak up more is because we need more clients and we need your thinking to help us get to more clients. That's the result we're trying to deliver. So you're pulling that thread all the way through, but you're using a regular cadence of feedback. After every meeting, after every interaction, we're just asking, what feedback do you have for me around our shifts? Did I deliver on the shifts in this meeting? Did I deliver on the shifts in that engagement? Did I deliver on the shifts in talking with that client? You're asking for your team to give you feedback all the time. Now, what's important about feedback is you're not looking to give a bunch of feedback. You're asking for feedback. So that's first tool in there is feedback. The second tool is stories. You got to start by having stories come up of what's happening in the organization or in the team so that everyone starts to envision what that shift actually looks like. So here's an example. Let me tell you what speak up looks like to me. Yesterday, we were in a meeting. Joe spoke up, mentioned 3 things that I'd never thought of. Because he said those 3 things, I did a whole bunch of things differently the next 3 days, and I got 2 new clients because of it. So you tell the story with the impact on the result, and that's what speak up looks like. And you land the plane with saying that's what it looks like to me, so that everybody in the organization can now know, everyone on that team can now know, okay, that's what it looks like to speak up, and I need to be doing stuff like that. Stories are powerful third-party experiences. You don't have to have the first-hand experience if you've heard the story and it's a good enough story. So you've got to get stories pumping through your team and happening on your team so that people can envision what it looks like to think and act differently. Remember, the current culture has been in place for a while. So you kind of run home to mama. People go back to doing it the way they've always done it. So if you're going to create a shift, you've got to create the vision of what that looks like. So start with feedback, use stories. The last thing is recognition. If you can give enough recognition to people around how they're showing up the right way, the new way, you reinforce the fact that people will continue to do that over and over and over again. So the 4 things that when you're starting with a new team, clearly define the results, make sure you know what those shifts look like from how the team thinks and acts today to how they need to. Align your leadership practices and your team practices so that they support the shifts that you've defined, and then get those 3 culture management, team management tools in place of feedback, stories, and recognition so that you can accelerate the process and progress that you need to make on your team. Do those 3 things, you'll create movement. Please subscribe to this channel if you found value in this video. We put lots of content here as well as on LinkedIn. You can follow me there. Just look down in the notes to this video. You'll see the links. Reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, here, wherever you want. If you have questions, happy to answer. If you want to learn more about Partners in Leadership, go to partnersinleadership.com. We've been working with organizations for 30 years on culture management and accountability.